Hello, my crafty friends. Well, today I have a fun and simple way that you can use up some of your scraps. And we are going to use our scraps to create a beautiful mosaic design. Hi, it's Lynn Dunn from Stamptastic Designs. Thanks so much for joining me today. In this episode of Stamptastic TV, I have two different card ideas I want to share with you, which feature this beautiful mosaic design. Now, this design may look complicated, but you are going to be so surprised at how easy it is to create these. Okay, so the first thing you need to get started with this technique are some scrap pieces of paper. And I'm sure you have plenty of scraps just like I do. So what I recommend is just find some scrap pieces that are really no bigger than an inch wide. So you can go an inch, you can go a little smaller, but you want to keep your pieces kind of small so that when we cut them up, we can make this beautiful mosaic design. So I just have different pieces of pattern paper that vary in length. And basically what I'm going to do is just cut up this paper into different little patterns. So I'm just going to make like random cuts and just cut up small little pieces. You can make these as small or as large as you want, I guess. But we just want some random cuts so that we have little pieces. And you want to use, of course, different patterns, because when we create this mosaic design, we want, a variety of different patterns in there. So let's cut up just a couple more. And again, you can see I'm just kind of making triangular shapes and then just some other odd little shapes just to kind of create a fun little design. Okay, so you can see I have a variety of different pieces, all in different patterns, different colors. So the next thing we want to do is we want to cut a 3x4 inch piece of white cardstock. Now you can really use any size cardstock piece you want. I just chose 3x4 because this is the style of card that I'll be making with these little pieces. But you can cover the whole card front if you want with this mosaic design. You can make smaller pieces. Any size cardstock piece will do. So the next thing you want to do is you want to use an adhesive sheet. And you want to cut your adhesive sheet down to the same size as your cardstock. So this is 3x4, and these adhesive sheets come quite large. So you have the ability to cut them down. And basically you just peel this off, and then you adhere it to your cardstock. So you want to smooth over this so that you get this to seal properly. All right, and then once you have this sealed, then you can peel off this backing to expose this adhesive. Okay, so once you have the adhesive exposed, then you can just start adding your pieces. And I like to use my little take your pick tool. And so I'm just gonna start in the middle and just add different pieces around it. And so you're basically just going to be leaving a little bit of space in between each piece as you adhere them. Okay, so we're just going to basically cover this entire piece of cardstock with these different little pieces of designer paper. All right, so once you have all the pieces kind of put in here, then we can go ahead and trim off this excess. But I want you to notice just how there's, just a little bit of space in between. So that's where the adhesive is. And so as you flip this over here and you trim off this excess, you just want to make sure that you don't put your fingers in that adhesive. All right, so now that I have all that trimmed off, you can actually use these little pieces to make, another layout. These little pieces will fit in really nicely, like in these little tiny spots. I actually could probably add a couple more, so maybe I will do that. All right, so now that we have all our pieces adhered and we have that adhesive showing in between all of these pieces, we're actually going to do some embossing. So typically when you use embossing powder, you use it with Versamark. You know, you stamp your image with Versamark and then you sprinkle the powder over. But we're going to actually use the adhesive sheet kind of as our Versamark. So I'm going to add some embossing powder in between all of these little pieces. So I want to cover this all with embossing powder, and then we are going to emboss this, and it's going to create just a beautiful look. So you can take a little paintbrush and just kind of brush off some of the excess embossing powder. You know, you can tap it off too, but I want to make sure I get it off of the designer paper so that it doesn't set up on there. And then I think we are ready to emboss this. So now all we have to do is take our heat tool and set this embossing powder. All right, so that's what you end up with. You end up with just a beautiful embossed background in between all of these pieces. All right, so we are going to make this very simple card. I just thought it was a really nice way to showcase the mosaic design. So I started with a piece of white cardstock, and basically I'm just going to take this pretty little design and I'm going to adhere it to a 3 1/8 by 4 1/8 inch piece of pebbled path cardstock. So let's adhere this. So now we'll just adhere this to our card front. The next thing I did is just cut a 1/2 inch wide by 3 1/2 inch piece of white cardstock, and I just stamped a little greeting on it using the Labeled with Love stamp set. You can use any greeting that you want. And so I'm just going to put this on the bottom here, just added a couple dimensionals to that. And then I just added a little element that I cut out of the designer paper and a couple little swirl dots just to embellish the card. So it's just a really fun way to use up some of your scrap papers. And as you can see, the cards look very different because every time you do this technique, you're going to get a little different look because you have different pieces of pattern paper that you're using. So the second card idea that I have to share is actually a landscape style idea. And I basically did the same thing I did with this card, except for I used a slightly smaller piece of white cardstock to start with. So for this one, this was a 3 by 4 inch piece of white cardstock. To create this one, I used a 3 by 3 3/4 inch piece of white cardstock. And then I did my little mosaic design, and I took the cardstock and I cut it in half. So basically when you take your cardstock and you cut it in half, you end up with 2 pieces. And these pieces measure 1 1/2 by 3 3/4 inches. So I used those on the edge. But I did the mosaic design on one piece of cardstock instead of 2 separate pieces. And of course, you can get the printable tutorial for both of these cards by clicking on the link featured in the description below this video. Okay, so there you go. Now you have 2 different card ideas and a fun way to use up your scrap papers to make this beautiful mosaic design. And if you enjoyed these card ideas, feel free to download the printable tutorial. You can find the link in the description below this video. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know by liking it and sharing it with your friends. And leave me a comment below to let me know what you enjoyed most about the video and the cards shared here today. Have a fun and creative day, my friends. Take care.